Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Maria Gallo. Maria, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here. I'm delighted.
Allow me to introduce who Maria is. She calls herself an Alumni Trailblazer. She's the author of the book The Alumni Way, visiting research fellow at Trinity, expert alumni advisor at the CERN in Geneva, and the founder and MD of Kite Keep in Touch Education. Well, Maria, again, welcome to the program. And this is the first question I have to ask you, Maria. You call yourself an Alumni Trailblazer. How many are there in the world?
It's a good question. I'm going to answer that in two ways, I think, Fritz, is that one is that, yes, I'm probably one of the only people that can call themselves an alumni trailblazer, because I do make it my mission to have people think differently about their alumni potential. We all have that as part of who we are, part of our alumni status. So I want people to think about their alumni networks differently. So that's what makes me an alumni trailblazer. But the second part of that answer that I really think is important is that there are a lot of other alumni trailblazers in the world, and that includes many, many people that are being highlighted by their universities, by their colleges, by their schools for the social impact that they're having, for their career success, for their excellence in their research work. So these are also alumni trailblazers. These are people that are inspirational to others and make for incredible role models. So they are also too alumni trailblazers, although it might not be part of their LinkedIn profile.
Okay, now I got that, but the fact that you put it on your LinkedIn profile also makes me assume you're very conscious of your personal brand.
That's so true. And it is, I have spent many years studying alumni relationships. I did my doctoral studies at the University of Sheffield in this area. I have published in this area, and I do a lot of scholarly research and consultancy research around the world in building alumni relationships. And I really want to make people, like I say, think differently about alumni relationships, and that comes at both the organizational level and also at the personal level. So people personally do that, and I think that does start, first with my brand, so that people can kind of see front and center what I do, which is when people think of the word alumni, I want them to think of me.
Okay, now good point. I got that. Actually, that's why I call myself a digital connector, because of the same reasons. To be honest, I'll be open about that. But let's go back to alumni. Now, there are so many networks out there, if you look at it, where you are a part of or were a part of. What sets an alumni network apart from the rest?
That's a really good question, Fritz. I think I want people to be thinking that pretty much any shared or formal experience that they've had in their life, they can be an alumni of that experience, because there are other people. Yeah.
So it's not restricted to formal education?
That's right. It's not. And that's what's so exciting about it, is that, you can, and it's those experiences that are maybe the most transformational for you. So it could have been that you went to a summer camp. It could be a sports activity that you participated in. It could be an award that you received. And then you become an alumni, so you're connected to other people who also received that scholarship or award. But of course, it can also be connected to where you did go to university or college, or even in secondary school. Of course, it can span all across those different areas.
Okay, then maybe for the audience's sake, what's the definition of alumni you use when you describe the networks as you are doing right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, the pure definition of alumni is a former student of a college or university. So that's the pure definition. But I like kind of a widened definition. So an alum, a member of an alumni community. So if you're an alum, which is sometimes you can call it an alumnus, which is a male, or alumna for a female, but alum is a nice common gender neutral term. An alum is somebody that is had any shared experience, whether that is a former company that they worked in. It could be, like I said, a sports team. It can be an organization they were a part of, a scholarship that they received. So it's a much more broad definition, and that's the definition I like to use. Because it allows us to connect to so many different networks and so many people that are within those networks and resources that are in those networks. So that's the power of alumni connection.
Got it. Now, if you want to make use of your former networks, that also, for me, the first thing which comes to mind is, okay, you have to have behaved yourself, that people remember you favorably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, and kindness. Yeah. When you're working within a network and you want to connect with your network, it should be a two-way street. Yeah. So I always say to people, there are kind of those questions that you really need to ask, which is, you might have a reason you want to reach out to somebody, and it could be that you do it through LinkedIn. Totally, and that happens all the time. But you have to also think about, asking that question, is there anything I can help you with? Because often people are out looking for something for themselves. Maybe they want to just have a quick conversation, a quick coffee online. The world has now become so small because we have normalized these kinds of conversations. And that's how we're able to even be here today, is through our connections that we have, which is amazing. So you want to be able to make sure that people feel that it's not just you asking for something, and that a network is really a two-way street. So you need to be asking, what can I, is there anything I can help you with? And you'd be surprised what the answer might be. And the second one is always to ask, who else do you think I should meet? So that you can start building that network further.
Got that. Before I ask, because I don't know the answer to this question, but sure. What did you study? And is there a link between what you studied and the fact that you started this whole movement of the Alumni Way?
A good question. So I studied, I did my undergraduate studies in political science, and within that I studied public policy and public administration. So I had a real passion for wanting to have a connection to public service. And immediately after graduation, I actually worked at the university. So I'm one of those people that right after graduation, I had a job and I strolled across the campus to my new position. And I did my undergraduate at the University of Toronto, and that's what I had studied. And then as I spent more and more time, I also did my postgraduate studies in public sector management. I was very interested in that field. And I started to get really curious about why I worked at a university, in a public university, and I worked at a public university in Canada, and now in my home in Ireland. And I started to wonder why other people didn't see the value in wanting to stay connected to their university, because I was there all the time and I could see all these amazing opportunities. So I decided to do my doctoral studies to study just that. And so I did a higher education doctoral qualification where I looked at alumni and focused on alumni connections.
Okay. Well, I'm making an assumption right now based on your story. I mean, you're one of those people who stayed at their university, so more or less kept on doing what they were educated for. A lot of people, once they finish university, they go completely off on a tangent, do something completely different. Yes. So would it still be relevant for those that majority of people who are doing something else with their life?
Absolutely, and even more so, because when you're connected in a college or a university and you've decided I'm going to go a different direction, think of all the other people that you're connected to, because you've all had that shared experience at the university or at the college. That they've also gone in different directions. So you don't just have that horizontal network of people that from your year or from your residence or from your discipline of what you studied, but you also have this incredible vertical network of people who also have done a variety of different things. They studied music or engineering or medicine and all of these other areas that might be the things that you want to get into. So it's an opportunity to kind of reach out to these people and say, we both went to X institution, but and I'm also curious about music education, or I'm also curious about research in this field. And could we have a quick online Zoom for 15 minutes so I can hear about your career?
Yeah, because that's probably what you're covering in your book, The Alumni Way.
Yes.
Who did you write this book for?
That's a really good question. So I wrote the book primarily for recent graduates and students. So it is for people who are kind of at that crossroads in their life in particular, but it also is really for anybody who, we don't all stay in a traditional career path anymore, and we're kind of all moving different career paths. So maybe as you go through your career and think that you might be mid-career and thinking, what should I do next? How do I kind of pivot my career? That reading this book will really give you a sense on, I actually have a wider network than I thought. It's not just people working in this particular area of engineering, for example. I actually have a connection to people who have incredible other careers, other paths, and I can actually connect with them and start to build my network in that direction. And it's a way to do that. And that's the reason I wrote the book.
Okay, so this, the way I now interpret it, this book is written for the individual to help them with their career.
Yes.
At the same time, you're also an expert alumni advisor at CERN.
Yes.
So how did an organization like CERN get involved and we need to get you in as an advisor? Why did they need you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think a lot of scientific organizations like CERN are recognizing that they have this incredible pool of incredible, extraordinary people that have connected at places like CERN. And they're realizing that these are the kinds of people that, if connected and staying connected both to the organization, but also to each other, they actually can create incredible things. So that was the reason, and part of what I would do is just help CERN to oversee and to ask those kinds of questions on how that engagement is happening, how it's staying energized, and it just think of all that even in those kind of scientific organizations, think of all that. That knowledge that people have gained and all that connection to CERN and how that might be able to tackle some of the world's greatest problems, looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. And they're realizing that if we keep these people together as a cohesive network, that they can start to mix and mingle, to collaborate, to look at joint research projects, and also to hire each other, to look at that talent pool.
Because I think you're touching on, okay, what's the business reason to do this from a certain perspective, but it's tapping in that knowledge which otherwise gets lost.
Yeah. Yes.
This applies for a research institute. I understand why a school could do this for a number of reasons. Would a family business or a corporate also, should they be interested in this thinking?
Well, definitely. And part of the reason why I call the book The Alumni Way is because I do want people to kind of, tweak their mindset about their alumni status. And a family business, for example, can say, well, a university or college, my own alma mater, which is, your own college or university, they might be a future client. They might be someone that you can that you can have collaborations with. You might be able to highlight your products or services within the university community. So it might not be the university themselves that become your client, but indeed people who are connected to the university. It could be the 18 to 35 demographic of students. It could be the staff. Who are particularly upwardly mobile and people that are highly engaged. So these could be a prospective client base. And it just also could be a place where you might be able to find market research support and help. So, and a lot of resources that are there. But also it might be a place that you want to give back, because you might want to inspire the next generation to think about either starting a family business or get involved in a family business. And so you could be the guest lecturer in a classroom, or devise a case study that's linked to your business. Really, the possibilities are endless.
Good to know that. That's good to share. Now, if I'd be devil's advocate and be a little
Sure.
bit cynic, I could also state, well, uh, those companies are going to do this for a branding and marketing purposes only. Because it looks good if you do good as an organization. A lot of organizations are doing that, and then once you're in that organization, you realize, hey, it's not as good as it was presented. Um,
Mm.
what's your advice there? I mean, what do organizations have to do to really take ownership of this idea?
Yeah, I think it's just about thinking about the authenticity of the kinds of relationships they want to build. They might find that connecting with a university is going to help them find their next talent, their next
Yep.
employees.
Yep.
And if they have an authentic relationship, if they kind of build a really good relationship with their university, that's something that will help them to be able to have all those really good, meaningful connections. And I think a lot of people can see through stuff like that now. I think there's a generation now that are that really want to find that sense of meaning. They want to connect with companies that are looking to have an impact on the greater good. And so universities and partnering with business and corporates have the opportunity to show really positive partnerships. We can be cynical about them, but hopefully we can. I'm an optimist, so I kind of hope that there will be a level of authenticity in the relationships that are built.
Yeah. Okay. Fair point. But how can I? No, I was thinking of my high school reunion,
Sure.
and to some extent that was a appointment for me, because I mean these are people I did not connect with over a number of years, and for a number of those people, sorry you are out there, guys and girls, there was a reason why is that. So are we? So how can you make sure it's not, you could say, it doesn't have that high school reunion feeling to it?
Oh, I like that. And it's funny because we often think that there is this myth that everything is about nostalgia. So this
Yeah,
is what alumni is about,
yeah,
right? Is
yeah,
that warm and fuzzy feeling. And you know what? There's a lot of people who don't have that warm and fuzzy feeling about their school, about their high school, about their university or college experience. Someone that, you might be inspiring, or that you might be inspired by. So I always say it's never, I would never advise anyone to close the doors, keep the doors open. Let people know that you went to that particular high school, because somebody else might say, I graduated 10 years after you. And I heard about what you're doing, and I'm very inspired by, your business, or somebody who graduated many times before you.
No, I absolutely. I mean, I was devil's advocate because I absolutely agree. You're right, because I had this experience introducing a couple of people to each other. I asked them to explore what they had in common.
Yes.
Two people in the same organization found out they both were attended the same high school, but 10 years apart. The
Yeah.
minute they realized that, they had a different connection. They,
Isn't it amazing? It's
yeah,
like there's like a magic, a sparkle that happens. And that's the kind of sparkle that we all kind of want to experience. So that's what I think Alumni Connection
yeah,
can provide us.
yeah. So where do you get your sparkle from? Your inspiration?
That's such a good question. So I think it all really started because I wasn't first in my family to go to university, but my dad was. So
Okay.
my dad really inspired me to see a passionate path on going to university. And we both went to the same college, the University of St. Michael's College at the University of Toronto. And so I kind of followed in his footsteps. But I realized that because he was first in his family to go to university, he didn't maybe understand the connections that were out there that he had for the rest of his life, and that he had to learn that path. He had to understand the people that he was connected to be able to advance his own education career. And I realized there are probably a lot of people out there that are like my dad. And I started to get curious, and also like myself, who I realized I needed to navigate the connections that I had, and to navigate. And once I started working at the university and I saw my friends graduate, this is 20 plus years ago when I first graduated from my undergrad. And I realized that they were struggling, and I'm kind of thinking, but there's all these amazing resources here on this campus, amazing people you could connect to. So I started to kind of play connector. I started doing, this is well before the internet and social media and LinkedIn. And I started to connect people, and I realized that this is a really powerful thing. And as we now have these really sophisticated systems, I realized that alumni now have this, it's really democratized the way that alumni connection can have. So in an instant, I can connect you, Fritz, for example, to the woman who is the head of your university's alumni office. I met her only a year ago. So I'm happy to connect you to her, and who knows what magic might happen. But equally, I can connect lots of other people. And I like to think of myself as a super connector, and I want other people to also be a super connector.
Okay, well, I'll share a secret with you. Sometimes I call myself a pathological connector. I cannot stop doing it.
Yes. Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. Okay, that's a good definition. Yeah. So it's and in some ways it's such a nice thing to do. It's a really generous thing to do, to make introductions for others. And I find that this is something that I think a lot of maybe people that are very early career should start to get into the habit of doing, because once you start, it's just, it's magic.
Yeah, it's always like a mindset. And so what would be the advice to young people starting out on their journey who just graduated? I mean, what's the key message for them?
So I think that the key message, I feel, is that they really need to first, spend a little bit of time thinking and reflecting back on their experience, and kind of just make peace with it. So whether it was good or bad, and then say, well, I am going to say that I'm part of this alumni community, whether or not I had a good or a bad feeling, so that I'm not losing out on any possible connections. And that's the first step. And the second is really about being curious and being consistent on building your network. So what I mean by being curious is, this opportunity to, ask curious questions to people when you meet them, and where did you go to university, what did you study, all of those kind of basic questions, and ask deeper questions, and do that on a regular basis. I would suggest to people to have something like, carve out an hour every Friday or once a month on a Friday, and go on LinkedIn and reach out to people and ask for an informational interview, which is 15 or 20 minutes of time that you're asking of someone's time just to hear about their career trajectory, just listening to their career story. You're not asking for a job. You're just starting to explore around how people might have got to the same degree as you and how they got to the career they're in today. And that kind of gives you a real glimpse into the kinds of things that you might yourself want to do. And then, of course, is the idea of generosity, that you can't just always be taking from your network. People will start to notice that. Yeah. You also have to be generous in giving back. So you might think, oh, I'm a young person, what could I possibly do? There are people who want to go to your university. So talk to prospective students, high school students, talk to younger people again, inspire them to go to university. These are the kinds of things you can do to support your network.
That's very good advice. Very much agree with that as well. Start as young as possible.
Yeah.
Now, in all those years, you've been looking at the Alumni Way, helping networks build communities. Have there been any failures or mistakes you've made along the way, and what did you learn from them?
Wow, that's a really good question. So I guess for me, when I first moved to Ireland 20 years ago, I realized that I jumped in with 2 feet. And I wouldn't say that it was not a failure but I just learned from my experience that I needed to really get a sense on how different alumni connections were going to be in Ireland. So you can't take when I left Canada and just kind of map that to what would happen in Ireland. So I went from working in a university there to working for a university here, and I needed to do a lot more listening, Fritz, and a lot more understanding about Irish culture and around how the university operates. And I think that would have helped to bring out more quickly the kinds of alumni relationships in my new role that could have been even done better. And so that's something I think I would have changed. But I think I learned, and now after a long time being here, I'm realizing that, we all have unique ways, whether you're in, different parts of Europe or Asia or Africa. It's just about, gauging the best ways to build your network and take that cue from your kind of local community.
Okay. So may I assume that although we have cultural differences, it's a global issue? I mean,
Yeah.
around the globe, you see people interested in this type of thinking?
Yes, absolutely. And that's so when I launched my book last year, I had events like around the world online, and they were across 17 countries and across 5 continents. So you realize that the message is really resonating with people, that we need to kind of, we have to rethink about alumni connection, that sometimes alumni and the word alumni in some parts of the world is always connected to fundraising. So people then really shy away from connecting to their university because they're worried that the university will ask them for money. Yep. And I always say to them, break free from that thinking, because the only person who that's hurting is you. So, make sure that, there's a way that if you want to do something like build your brand, what better way than to meet loads of people who have done the same thing or who have done things that you're interested in, and you have connections to them right now, and that's through your alumni network.
Hey, great advice. Maria, this topic is dear to my heart. That's why it's a shame that we've almost run out of time. But before we end, I want to ask you, are there any takeaways you want to give the audience? This is the brand called you. Can you make a link between the Alumni Way and your personal brand there?
Sure. When you're building your personal brand, it's also part of building your network. So you are as strong as the network around you. So you can think about who you want to bring around you in your network. And that can be done through your alumni connections. And don't be shy. People love to hear from you. I think that's a one for people. That's a hard one for people to understand, but it is really true. If you get a LinkedIn message, I know that if I do, I get excited to want to go and connect with someone who's maybe a younger new grad, and that helps to build your brand. And the second one is being consistent. So create an Alumni Friday and go out consistently and build your network, and that will help to build your brand.
Great advice. And Maria, again, I really loved talking to you, and I now understand why you call yourself the Alumni Trailblazer. You definitely are, and I hope a lot of people will pick up on the lessons you've shared with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.